And that's why Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift. She like has an idea, she commits to that, and then she practices, and then she gets there. And then all of us see her do something and we're like, wow, that's amazing. But that amazing always came from the other stuff.
Hey, it's Cate with Thrive with Cate podcast, and I'm here with my new best buddy, Chris Orwig of chrisorwig.com.
Yes, Cate, I'm so excited to chat. Any chance to chat with you, I'm like all 100% in.
Oh, likewise. You have photographed people that have incredible stories. Like there's Yvonne. I used to work at one of Yvonne's shop. There's Kelly Slater, right? Like there's these people that have really been influencers, and you've been able to capture their story in a picture, yes, which is a fascinating concept. Do you want to just talk a little bit, just being someone who tells the story? I love too in your bio how you said what I enjoy most about photography is finding the light within others and connecting in a meaningful way.
Yeah, heck yeah. Well, I mean, like I could, one story that comes to mind, I mean, Kelly Slater. So for people who don't know who he is, he's a world champion, 11-time world champion surfer, kind of like the GOAT in that space. And I knew whenever you photograph someone who has a well-known story, you can't just replay the same story, right? Or I'll do another thing. Jack Johnson, singer-songwriter, I photographed him as well. And when he makes a new album, and he also has a place here in Santa Barbara where I live, but so when he makes a new album, and when I've talked with him about these things, it's like he knows he can just like recreate the old album because that's what people loved, but that won't make it good. And so as a artist or photographer, I know I can't just recreate something someone else has done, or like I can't just lean on the fact that he's famous or something. So I have to find like my story, if that makes sense. And so in talking to him, we were talking about identity, and we were kind of going deep in identity. And he said to me, Chris, I'm embarrassed to admit that for most of my life, I played to the idea of Kelly Slater versus being the person of Kelly Slater. And once I had that, then I had a story that's relatable. I mean, we all can relate to that. I think celebrities just have a tougher time. There's like, who are we projecting into the world and who are we really? And he went on to say like, look, I got to play the part because there are guys who sell gear with my name on it. And if they don't sell it, they're not going to bring home enough money to pay rent. They have a wife and a kid or something. I have to do my duty, so to speak. But he realized he did that so much to such an extent, he made mistakes. And so it was like finding his core, who he was, so he could be both people. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
Totally. And then if you go into like capturing someone's portrait in that context, you can get something deep and soulful and interesting. And that's always the case. Like we kind of find the story we're looking for. If I had gone in like, oh man, he's like handsome and strong and cool and great surfer, and he can do these like, cool moves or something, then I would have told that story, and it wouldn't have been a good story. And so in photography, because I teach a lot of it, what tends to happen is with my students, like I taught at college level for a decade, when they would photograph someone who was beautiful or handsome or someone they admired, it would almost always be a bad photograph because the person was so beautiful, they thought their beauty would carry the weight of the image, or so handsome or something. But that's not the work. The work of photographer is totally different than that. It's not just noticing, it's noticing, and then it's doing the work. So, and I know I'm talking a lot here. You can tell I get all excited about that, but it's like that. Or maybe let me pause there. And then,
because what I'm curious about, right, when you, is like, where do you see, because I think one of the hardest things right now, if we look at, influencer business models, influencer brands, whether they're driven by a service or product, and we're in this influencer attention, reputation economy, right? Where like when we have more money, this is what we buy. if
Right.
we're an influencer. Like we're buying the attention, we're buying our reputation, we're buying more, share out
Right.
there. Where do you see influencers like just either I don't want to say like getting it all wrong, not
Yeah.
doing it right,
Yeah. Yeah.
not having the insight that you have and helping other people tell their story through imagery and
Yeah.
through text
Totally. 100%. Like
or
that's
video?
such a good question. I'm going to answer it two ways. First of all, I'm going to go back to doing the work of a photographer, which is we're all photographers now, right? There are no like non-photographers in the world, and the world can't sell a cell phone without a camera on it. It's just like impossible. No one would buy it. So if we're all photographers, we better do the work of photography. And so what I mean by that is like our intention really shapes what we're doing. And so if we're writing something, we could write an email or we could write a poem. What our intention is depends on how we write. So photography is the same thing. So with photography, and then I'll tie this to the influencer thing. What we tend to do is we see like something cool, like a flower, and we're like, wow. And we take a picture. And that first instinct, or if it's an influencer, like, oh, this is like, there's a rainbow, like take a picture of me in front of the rainbow, like we get the hit. But that's not art. That's just a hit. That's just something piqued your interest. And so you have to say yes, then you do the work. Or put it in a different way, like my friend who's a National Geographic photographer, this was like 25 years ago, told me, if I'm on assignment to photograph San Francisco, day one, I do the postcard shots. Day two, I do the work of a photographer. Or if I only have 1 minute, the first 30 seconds get the obvious shot, the second 30 seconds get the deep and meaningful shot. So the first thing is to not trust your first shot and to just let that be something that's giving you awareness. So as an influencer trying to have impact, meaningful impact, if you notice there's a moment where you're like, huh, interesting, or I'm just trying to think of last time I was with someone, like maybe, I don't know. I'm not coming up with one, but just like something cool, like beach and there's amazing light and you're like, whoa,
Well,
this is
I could
great.
tell you about a bunch of videos I shot this morning too,
Okay, let's
because
do
that might
that.
make
Yeah.
it relevant. Okay, so for me, I have this biohacker, ancient meets futuristic uh, agenda, right? It's very education
Yeah.
driven. And so we're launching the Primal Habits Challenge on the solstice. And so I'm out in the woods with the dog, mountain biking, and I stop and pick nettle in the nettle patch. And what inspired me to like press record was I was talking to the nettle and I was like, I'm going to miss you guys so much. I won't be back for 5 weeks. I hope it goes well, and then I was like, this is such a thing. Like I didn't used to talk to nettles. Right. When did I start talking to nettles? And why am I talking to the nettles? And who else is talking to nettles? And like, what is it like to have this kind of relationship with an ecosystem and with a patch of food that's nurtured you for 20 years?
Right.
Right. So I'm like, okay, grab the camera.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
tell,
So you have the hit, so to speak, like, wow,
yeah,
this
have
is
the
this
hit.
is something.
This is something
Right.
I want members to know, and I want them to understand how that ties into microbiome health.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That it's not about buying the supplements and the probiotics in the store. I mean, unless it is at first, but yes, but then it evolves and it graduates into a recovered connection with the ecosystem. Yeah. So now you go.
Yeah. So what I would say is like you had a little instinct, like maybe like nettles. Wow. Hi, nettles. And then you said, oh, this could be interesting. And then you're kind of developing your story. And this is kind of how we work in the world as influencers, as storytellers, right? We're like, we pull on these little threads in a way. I think the next step is really thinking about how do you divide up and deliver the story? And what I mean by that, if I'm working for a really big brand or an influencer or something, there are different parts of the story that I need to tell. And some of those pieces of the story are going to be snackable. So if we're talking, let's just be goofy, Thanksgiving dinner or something, they're like carrots or rolls or something. It's like not like the main course thing. If you have too much main course A+ content, it's not trustworthy. So you have to like intentionally create some content that just feels light, snackable. Maybe the lighting isn't great. It's more snippety. And so you really almost have to like put on that hat and be like, okay, right now I'm creating snackable content, which is, let's say for a brand, like I have a shoot coming up for a really big brand. I will literally do that. I'll like put down my big camera, grab my small camera, and I'll just like create these little in between snackable moments.
Mm.
And
It's like the
then
story behind the story.
kind of, yeah, or just like kind of like the, I kind of learned this from my daughter, actually. She got her braces off and she was like, Dad, this is years ago, but could you take a picture of me for Instagram? I was like, yeah, she never asked me that. And, and so I was like taking a portrait of her and she's like, Dad, you can't make it look like a photo shoot. I was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And she picked an orange off our orange tree, put it on her head and kind of tilted sideways. And then that's what she ended up posting, which was like, there's an orange on my head. And oh yeah, I got my braces off.
Mm.
And that's a classic snackable moment. Like the portrait I took was freaking amazing, but it was too amazing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For her to be an influence for her friends, she had to come in at that language that was relatable, little quirky, not like, because my portraits, will be like, celebrated, or I'm sponsored, or I get all this, like they'll be in publications. You don't want that. You might need that image at some point, or video. We could talk about video in the similar way. So there's that. And then another thing I would like, that's important to say is like when we go video, let's go there for a little bit. Thinking like a cinematographer. Cinematographers always have 3 shots. They have an establishing shot, which shows like, where the heck am I? So if I were out mountain biking with you and you're like, Chris, let's do this thing, I'd be like, all right, awesome. I would have to do something that just shows like, we're not in my backyard, even though, because we could have trees and that all in my backyard. Something where we're like, what's the scene setter? Then we need a medium shot, which is like, we're kind of getting a little closer. Then we have a close-up shot. And every scene has those things in it. Then I'm really thinking about the eye line. Like our eye lines are at the 3/4 mark, like right across the middle, let's say, or the 3/4 line of the screen. This is traditional classic portraiture. Some people on Zoom, they'll come on Zoom calls and they're like way down here, and I'm always like, people just rise up a little bit. And there's a different emotion when you're high or low in the screen. And so I'm thinking about, where is that? Then I'm also thinking about camera height. So if the camera is much higher and I'm kind of looking up into the camera, that's going to be great for light on my face. Imagine a forest. So I might need to do that, especially if you have a helmet or hat on, because if it's like this, it's kind of like blocking all this stuff. But if I come up here, so I might need to think about my camera height lifting a little bit if I'm outdoors in the woods, so that I'm getting, you almost always want to have a little catch light in the eye. That's where like the eye's alive. And it's, when people say someone's eyes are sparkling, if you look at my portraits, like it's actually all about the light in the eyes. And that's almost 90% of what I do. And because the eyes tell the story. So there's a
good example. But yeah, even just seeing in this, who's this guy with the car?
This guy's a shoe designer. He's really cool. Maybe go to like a section. Can you go? Where's the navigation on my website? Because can you zoom out a little bit? Go to the menu right there. Go to photo galleries, and then go to like up close portraits. Let's just do that. People in place is more like the environmental thing. So this guy on the right, young Pueblo, famous poet. On the left, famous actress. You click through him, but you see that she Isabel Lucas. She's amazing.
She looks amazing. She looks like someone who's just super cool to hang out with.
Yes. What's really funny is I photographed her once. I saw her at the beach and I was doing this project and I didn't know she was famous. And she was at the time dating this super famous musician. Wait, pause here. This guy on the right, this is taken on the Brooklyn Bridge. He's a stranger. So a lot of the photos I do on the left, obviously it's fashion. On the right, it's like we're walking by each other. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the first photo is really bad. And then they're doing construction on the bridge. And so there's this white wall. And I said, will you stand over here? I did the work of the photographer. So the first image, because you can tell, like looking at the guy, you're like, dude, there's something amazing about this.
Yeah, totally.
But then the first photo is bad and the second photo is good. And then filmmaking, it's the same thing. Do next here. Let's just see what others come up. Okay. This woman on the right, she creates skateboards she creates sculptures out of broken skateboards, like these are just, and she hates being photographed. She despises it. So most of the people I work with aren't like, yay.
She doesn't look like she despises. She looks like she's just like, yeah, I do this all the time.
Yeah. Well, what I have to do as a photographer is find the story. And so that's what you did so well back to the influencer thing. You're like, Nettles, okay, here's the story. And then now let's tell the story. So for her, I really had to say, like, well, tell me, why do you create sculptures? What are you doing next? And then once we're getting on a story, and she talks about, she was doing this whole thing on like famous women who have inspired her. And it's amazing. Like,
Mm.
literally, she's a mind blowing artist. But then once we're there, you can see that contentment and then when I tell her like what to do with her hands, because a
Mm.
lot of times when we take photos, we're like, where do my hands go?
Totally.
Anyway, but the light in the eye. So back to the influencer, back to you in the field, really, really thinking about the light as telling a story. This kind of light, and most of the light, even this last two, that basically this is garage, or it's called open or covered shade. Basically, the one on the left, he's standing in his garage, just and the garage door is open. The one on the right, Von Chenard, he's standing in the iron or in his tin shed where it all started, and he's just standing at the door. And so the light, what happens is you basically, when your back is facing darkness and your front is facing light, like if there's one principle in photography, it's that. Put your back towards whatever is darkest and your front towards whatever is brightest. So that could mean, I imagine if we click through, we would see other examples. There'll be some where like someone's in front of a building, or yeah, like this is all like that one on the left, maybe here, or go to the next one, maybe. Sorry, this is remote. But like this one on the left is downtown LA, and that's there's an overpass, a big 4 or 5 freeways over his head, but
Mm.
he's standing there. And then there's the light. The one on the right, that's Jack O'Neill, credited with inventing the wetsuit, on his patio. But there's something, there's an
Is that like a
overhang.
wetsuit eye patch on his eye? Is
Oh,
that
Kate, this is the best. So I'm photographing him, and he's pretty frail. He's since passed away at the time. And I say, like a dummy, I'm like, oh, your eye patch is made out of wetsuit material. You know, why is that? And he's like, how else would I keep my eye socket warm when I'm surfing?
real deal? The
real,
real deal.
real deal. But so
Mm.
anyhow, so back to you and out there is really just thinking about light in your eyes is like so key, right? And again, it's like once people see my work, they're like, oh, you kind of do the same thing everywhere. But in the case on the left, it's downtown Hollywood. On the right, it's at this guy's ranch. But I'm
Mm.
just really, really looking at where the light are in the eyes. And so here's the hack for that. I don't have a pair of sunglasses, but let me see if I have anything shiny. I don't know if it's going to show up on this, but
Yeah, that shows up shiny.
does this show my light here, this here, maybe?
Yeah, if you go a little, yeah, just point it down a little. Yep,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah,
So if you go back to my maybe show my camera. I don't know if we can go back to that.
yeah, yeah,
Let's see. So we can see I have a light source that is coming in here.
yeah.
And that makes me just have this even light, kind of like we all have or on Zoom these days, like something. So what you do is you take sunglasses, because sunglasses are basically like an eyeball, but they have reflective material on it. It's the same shape. And you just hold your sunglasses up and you kind of you walk around and say, where is the reflection on my sunglasses?
Yeah, look at that. Yep, there it is.
And then you're like, okay, I want to stand there. And then camera's opposite that.
Right, right.
And so that can be a fun way to do that. Now, it doesn't always have to be that way, because some of the photos you may have noticed, like I'll do this thing where it's split lighting, which basically means maybe kind of like this, where one side's darker, one side's brighter.
Yeah.
And
I wrote my college essay on that, like the
oh, you
split.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all nature and culture for me. It was just that, it's like when we see in duality, right? Or when we're trying to
Yes.
play into duality and into paradox and into conflict and like that there's
Yes.
always a story in that.
Yeah. And that can be a beautiful way, obviously, to tell all those stories, or to like have something not be so clean cut. Like maybe, hey,
Yeah.
this is sort of complicated. So
Yeah.
rather than like this full, even light,
Yeah.
maybe you want to kind of be like, this is a little complicated. So really thinking through, I mean, I'm rewinding for like influencers, where they get it right, where they get it wrong. They get it right in instinct. If you're an influencer, you have an instinct that like, there's something here. And so cultivating the attention to that, like being so sensitive to those moments, and then acting on it. So like, even if let's say I'm going to film myself, I'd be like, wait, this is really cool. Take a picture of myself. And then I'm like, okay, huh. And then sort of figure out, okay, what story am I telling? Why am I telling that? And then how can I deliver it in different pieces? It could be I need to have a couple different shots. It could be I need to change my camera height. Camera height's really important. Most of us hold or set up camera heights at eye level, but just going high or low can really change it. And then it could be that if I get this really, well, let's just say if I talk to camera for too long, it's not going to be very interesting. We need some other stuff I might need to cut to. So that, that's called B-roll, obviously, but we need something that's like staring at a face for too long becomes actually really uninteresting. And usually in cinema these days, like the cut duration is 2 or 3 seconds. So you see something, then it changes. Then you see something, then it changes. But it's like 1, 2, 3, new thing. 1, 2, 3, new
So
thing.
let's talk about that in a few ways. Because like part of me is like, I mean, you're in California, so part of me is like, gag me with a spoon, right? Like part of my is like, a lot of influencers don't want to. They either don't want to play into the short attention span, and they want to cultivate an audience that can just actually tune in to the content, right? And then the other part of me is like, and then there's also maybe another way to do it. Because what I noticed myself doing as far as that, especially almost all of my videos have my dog. So like, I'll just cut to my dog without having to do any editing. I'll just be like, what's Lucky? Because today in the Nettle video, guess what Lucky was doing? Eating grass.
Yeah.
Right. So she's like doubling down. She's like clicking down on my point. Right. And I didn't even know it, but I just put it on her. And then it's like right there. So what? And then I get that, yes, we all need these videos that have like the 2-second cuts.
Yeah.
Right. And those might be good for whatever clicks or getting more subscribers or hero videos or some really specific type content. Go ahead.
No. And part of it is like with all of that and these different like rules or ideas that there's no one right way to do this.
What do you like? Like, do you like, so like, who do you pay attention to for content, for like thought leadership, for content, for like, where you're just like, you just think it's cool, the conversation. And then what do you notice that you really don't mind about maybe their lack of overly producing shit?
Yeah, I think what I like the most, and is like when you have like a really high production, like let's say intelligence, and then you actually mindfully shoot it in a way that it's low production.
Yeah.
So that's like, it's not haphazard, slacking, lazy. Even like, let's go back to my portraits because we're blending worlds here a little bit. But basically, I'll be like, hey, famous person. Yeah, we talked a little bit about like I photographed astronauts. Let's say, hey, like famous astronaut. I'm like, hey, will you stand over by that door? And he's kind of like, I actually don't have any of those up because I can't share them. But it's okay.
We'll still look at cold faces.
Yeah, we can look at pictures. Yeah, you did a good job cutting too, a new scene. But I'll just be like, hey, stand over there, and they're like, okay, and they just think, what in the world? Like, this is not going to be a good picture, but I know in my heart that it's going to be a great picture. The wolf, that was a really powerful moment. But
holy cow, that doesn't even, it's like, is that real? Is that AI? Oh my God.
No, that's real. So like that, I mean, this is another example is the wolf was on set for this thing and they were using it, like integrating it into a scene, and there was like a wolf handler. And I said to the handler, I said, is there any way I could capture a portrait of the wolf? And she was like, oh, are you kidding me? Yes. And so brought it to the back of basically like a U-Haul truck, opened up the back of it, and then got the wolf, like walked, there's steps into it because it's a grip truck for like Hollywood stuff. But then it went to the back. So its back was all dark behind it, and the camera can't see into darkness very well. And then it's facing the light, and it's about you know, however high that is, maybe waist high. And I had to get on the ground like 20 or 30 feet away, almost laying down, and wait for the wolf to allow me to enter its presence.
Mm.
And then I slowly moved in towards it. And then I'm like really close to it. We're just like looking at each other. So amazing.
For those who are listening on the podcast, it's like just a straight head-on shot with this wolf with the most gorgeous, like caramel hazel eyes and this
yes.
coat and this bitch. Yeah, and it's so straight on, right? It's like it's geometrical.
Yes. And that's kind of, I mean, back to creating content for the influencer is like, if you look at my stuff, a lot of it's kind of the same. Like you could criticize it that like you kind of just like, you have someone, and let's just say my up close work. That's Ben Harper. He's a great musician, but they're like, you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And that's to the person who doesn't get it, that's what style is. Style is you should be able to look at someone's photo or video or influencer thread or whatever it is and be like, I instantly know this is coming to us from Cate. Like Cate always does these things with her dog coming in or mountain biking or being out in the wilderness or whatever I'm inventing. And so trying to find ways to cultivate consistency so that the viewer feels at home. And that's really what influencers are trying to do, even though maybe they're influencing over a kind of semi-broad range of stuff. Like maybe you're into, well, let's just say someone's into wellness, they're wellness influencer. Well, then there's like 8 different categories within that, right? Maybe they're going to talk about in their space, or 20, it doesn't matter, but trying to find that cohesive thread. And a lot of that cohesiveness can come from the way that it's captured or shot or the feeling of it or the proximity of the camera or the diversity of the shots. I mean, back to what I like things that are slow and poetic. Like I don't like fast cuts. I don't like things that are kind of like coming at me too hard and fast. So if I'm working with someone, let's say it's you and I in the woods, I might get a small shot of you like mountain biking up on the trail, and then and yeah, click around if it's helpful. But and then we might film something else, and you click into other galleries if you want it over there. But and then I would try to do it in a way that was true to you and conveyed your message in a like really natural and authentic way. And for me, authenticity is Jerry Lopez on the right there. He's one of the most authentic people out there in the world, I think. But what authenticity is never something you achieve, but you just lean towards, because none of us are truly authentic. It's kind of like, maybe like kindness. You're never like 100% kind. We're always probably complicit in something that's not great, but we strive for it. And so just striving to be something that has alignment. And then in doing that, telling stories in that way.
So what I'm hearing in that, I just want to reflect back, like it's like there's, it's kind of like how people use filters, right? It's like get it so that people can recognize what it is. Like develop a style that's authentic to who you are. So you don't have to like pretend to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
And that you can just really show up in that, but you show up in that consistently. So like that's sort of like branding guide or style guide for
exactly
like what filters you use or what fonts you use on your top of your videos. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what about this? This is one of my other questions. So let's talk about, because you mentioned, I think the word, what was it? I think it was like lazy. And I was like, ooh, I'm definitely a lazy. Like I'm not lazy in capture or publishing. I'm like lazy in, I'm just kind of like, oh, I have this. I just ride the inspiration, just do it without much. Without much forethought. But it's like my shit's, I think so. I really think it's interesting. Like I really do. Whether I'm like showing someone how to like this is, and like my dad, I have him doing enemas this week with some pea enemas with all this microbiome stuff, and I'm talking about the crapswold getting released and like this new FDA drug, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is how you do it. Boom, boom, boom. It's like a 1 minute video, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, like, the style is totally lazy, impromptu, on the go, no filters, raw all the time,
Yeah. But that's
you
you.
know,
I mean,
and
that's
that's
so true to
me.
you. Yeah. That's how you operate in the world.
That's yeah. So I don't need
everyone,
to do it differently.
yeah, I would never say you'd want to do that differently. The only thing I would
Mm,
say is all strengths are weaknesses, right? So I'm
yeah.
just going to say you're raw, real in the moment. Let's just kind of do it. And this is happening. That's it. And I would say yes. And how can we make this art? And so what I mean by that is I believe media can be medicine and it can actually be healing. So I think the thing itself, the delivery mechanism has potential to activate, heal, connect with someone. And so just asking ourselves, well, is there some way? And when I mean art, I mean like it just has like a resonance to it that's just a little bit more, right? So it's sort of like, I don't know, like I feel like my kids, like they'll make a quesadilla and there's times where they just like throw it on there and they make their quesadilla or something. And then there's other times where they like sprinkle the cheese and it's like a little art project, right? And so just
Yeah.
asking ourselves, like, are there ways
Mm,
to, yes, be true to self, raw, real, like, look, there's no filters here. This Cate's the real deal. I mean, and that's what's so amazing about you and why everyone loves you is the Cate that shows up is always the same Cate, right? There's no
mm,
errors. There's no, it's not like, other influencers though, just to credit those, there's some who, and I was with one this week who was like in sweats and just looked like drab. And then when she went on camera, she like looked amazing. Then when she was off camera, she'd put back on her sweats. And so for her approach, and she has a big audience, massive audience, it was really like looking a certain way and never showing the other way. And that was what was on brand and part of her
yeah.
presence in the
Right.
world.
Million ways to do you, right? Or
Yes.
like one way to do you. It's just the way you do it.
Yes. But what I would say with her is she did all this work to get to look really well. But then I was there in kind of a support role. Someone else was doing camera work and the camera angles and the lighting, it wasn't that good. And I was so disappointed. Like it could have just made
Mm,
some easy changes
mm,
to up level that. And so that's what I mean. Just looking at like that last 10%, and just saying like,
yeah.
okay, great. This is it. 90%. I'm here. This is the story. Yes. Then
And because then
what
it's way
else is it?
less in post production, right? Like then it's like way less
Oh,
after. If it's all
yeah.
set up right, then there's
Yeah.
not all this needing to
Yeah.
adjust this and that. And
Totally. Yeah. And you almost want to shoot it like it's film. And so here's what I mean by that. Like I'm going to go to photography, films, and same kind of thing. But it used to be a quarter per click on our cameras. So every time I'd push the button, we'd do this for students, we'd drop a quarter in a bucket. And so it was like costing you. So like 4 photos was it cost you $1. And so if it cost you something, you're like, let me be thoughtful about this versus
yeah,
I can fix it
yeah,
later. Film, when you shoot film as for video, for motion picture film, it's so expensive. So you just are thoughtful. So that's what I mean by shoot it like it's film. Like basically what it means is like, yeah, let me be thoughtful. Let me get this right. Let me not think about fixing it later. Let me dial this in. And then you're happier. Everyone's happier. Like the setting I was on with that influencer, if they had just fixed the lights a little bit, it was like, could have been like a 2-minute fix. It would
yeah,
have been worth it. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
having that mindset, that being said, I'm going to contradict that. I remember I was on set with Dennis Miller. He's like Saturday Night Live guy, comedian. He was doing a commercial and it was like no, it wasn't a commercial. It was like I don't know, it was a few minute spot for something. And it took him 15 takes to get it right. Like 15 takes. And this guy's like a pro. And when I saw that, it was so liberating to me. And everyone else liked his takes, but he didn't. He knew it wasn't like his comedic timing wasn't quite there. And then finally he got it. And he also knew there's this huge production, all this money. I mean, minutes are money on a set, like really big
Mhm.
money. And he did that. Or flipping it to, I was on set with Millie Bobby Brown, and she made more money than is unimaginable in this one day commercial shoot I was on with her. And she, same thing, like the director, yeah, there's Millie. That's from that shoot, actually. That's outside of the soundstage in Hollywood, and there it is on the shoot. She did this particular moment. I have a little video of it, like where afterwards the director had her just change the way she said one word, and so they went back and redid the whole thing, and and um, and it was just about one word, and it really changed the whole energetic feel of it. And as a side note, Cate, like I did this shoot, and then I came home dinner, and my kids are like, "What'd you do today?" And I was like, "Well, I did this thing." Like, who was it with? And I said, Millie Bobby Brown. And they're like, "What? Why didn't you bring us?" I was like, "I don't know. I didn't know you guys knew who she was."
All of a sudden, dad is cool.
Yeah, Dad. I mean, for a moment, I got a few cool points, but it's very rarely. I'll be like, "Yeah, like, Von Chenard." They're like, "Von Chenard?" Like, what? Or, whatever. But so
So tell me this. So I'm going to Rishikesh with Indy. She's going to
you
be
are,
in
yeah.
a yoga teacher training, right? We leave tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I got a really good mic for my
Yeah,
iPhone so
yeah,
that I could just capture some of, just so I can mess around
yeah,
with sound
yeah,
and being where I am. Because what I'm seeing so much and where I'm, Club Thrive Global, like we've always
yeah,
been global, but now it's in our
yeah,
name. And, just this sort of the real story in the adventure and the thinking and the research and all that is happening like in real time, right? And I think that's what you were pulling up before. It's like there's the all the other photos of Kelly Slater, and then there's your
yeah.
photo with Kelly Slater,
Yes, yes,
right? And like for me, in relating to that, it's like there's always the evolving edge. And
yeah,
what the influencer is doing, if they're doing it well, is they're bringing a dialogue into the evolving edge.
yes, yes. And there's like, let's say with India, some people are like, "Oh, India, I've been there 20 times," or everyone goes to India. But you can't, like, and obviously you know this, but for the rest of us, you can't ever let that dissuade you from finding your own story. Or like the Golden Gate Bridge, like it's been done a million times. But yeah, we always have to say, "Well, but I haven't done it." And what the I is in that is, how is this impacting me? What is this triggering, bringing up in me? Because the reality is, what makes any visual story interesting is that it's coming from Cate and not anyone else, because we have
Right.
the capacity to tell stories no one else does. So first, I mean, I know you know this, but I'm just, for the rest of us, it's like really tuning into that, and then tuning into like I would, if I were going to India with my daughter, I would probably have a few different storylines in mind that I would actually even storyboard out. So you draw rectangles, think of different shots that I want to get. All filmmakers, Steven Spielberg included, like he does it with his iPhone often. He'll storyboard with his iPhone, and then they come back in with the real cameras. But you want to have a sense of like frame, different frames, different pieces, and where is it going? I think the mistake some of us make is we're just, or actually not some of us, all of us, myself included, we just shoot all this content. And then it gets lost on our phone because we're just like, "Well, that was cool. That was cool. That was cool. That's cool. Wow, that's neat. Oh my gosh, amazing." So for me, if it was like for you and your daughter, I might be like, one story is actually just about your daughter. One story is maybe about mother daughter. Another story maybe is about something to look at Club Thrive. And it's about, maybe there's a couple parts to that. And most of the time, the stories you have in mind evolve and change and grow. But that
Yeah.
prep work gets you in a frame of mind. And so let me just say the last thing on this, which is, if, I were to say, to anyone who's listening right now, say, find three things that are blue. You could look around and suddenly you're going to see the color blue. And I'm now seeing a blue book, a blue thing on my fan, and my blue case on my iPhone. I did not notice blue until that that question or thought allowed me to see it. And so the way our brain works, the reticulator activator, it's only allowing certain things in. And so as content creators, we have to tell that part of our brain what we want it to pay attention to. And obviously there will always be surprise, but that's what storyboarding is. That's what mapping stuff out is. And it all of a sudden heightens us to this. Like a neat story that I would love to see you tell about India is just colors. Just do a story on colors and just like collect like 20 clips of like colors. It has nothing else but just like, wow, these colors. And those kind of practices are what artists do. Like filmmakers who would go to India, they would do a day of colors. And then their whole film production would show up and they would shoot for a month. And everyone would be like, the colors in that movie were so amazing. And it's because they freaking did the work beforehand, right? And then they weren't distracted by the something on set or the actors or whatever, or the lines getting read wrong. They cued their brain, heart, mind, soul up for something. And so queuing it up is a big part. Having some ideas, having something pre-visualized, and of course being willing to scrap it. But most of us, I mean, the best influencers, I think, do a lot of work. I think they're almost like Olympians. Like we see an Olympic athlete, we're like, wow, that's amazing. But really, it took them like 10 years to get to that level of amazing. So most really powerful influencers have done all this work behind the scenes. And I remember my daughter telling me about Taylor Swift. She was reading this article about her. And it was about how Taylor Swift, when she was, I don't know, 13 or something, wanted to learn how to do the splits. So she practiced it every night for 15 minutes for 10 months until she could do it. And that's why Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift. She like has an idea, she commits to that, and then she practices, and then she gets there. And then all of us see her do something and we're like, wow, that's amazing. But that amazing always came from the other stuff. So, and I'm trying to relate this to content creation. For a lot of us influencers, it's like the afterthought, or it's like the sexy part, or it's like the amazing thing. And it is. It's like it's the juice. It's juicy. It's wonderful. I mean, that's how we have influence in the world. But to be good at it, it takes some of that work. And that could come from intention, attention, practice, working, thinking about camera angles. If you watch a film on the way over, take notes about the film and the lighting and the camera height and the camera distance and the characters in it, or the light in the eyes, or find whatever you like. Like for me, I told you it's light in the eyes. And so 90% of my images probably have light in the eyes just because of that. I have other photographer friends who don't care about light in the eyes. For them, it's all about gesture and form. And the person and what they're doing. Or maybe I think of a friend who does a lot of action sports stuff. It's about like, he does a lot, like you have to do peak action, but then he also does this just like quirky, weird stuff that action sport people do. And it's hilarious. So he's like humor and peak moments. And so people love him and love his work because he shows us more.
So in terms of audio and video, it's just, and I know we got to wrap up soon, but like audio and video. So for me, because I'm a writer, right? And I'm a podcaster and I'm a coach, like for me, it's all dialogue driven, like particularly. And that's how it really all started, was like, I was teaching. Students would ask questions, right? So it was like living our Ayurveda course. And then we would record experts with interviews where I would speak for the members and interview all these Vaidyas and gurus and all that. And this was like 2010, maybe. And then, people are like, how do I share that with my sister or my yoga teacher or my whatever? So we put it on the podcast. So then I just started interviewing more. And then if I look over time, then I started writing books and about concepts that I found that were not explained well otherwise I wouldn't have written them, right? It's like if someone else had done it, I wouldn't have done it. I wasn't looking for something to do. I wasn't looking to become an author. It wasn't a goal. It was like, it's just easier to tell people chapter 3 if it's not written somewhere else, just to write it down. So, but because of that, I'm more linguistic than visual, I would say. Like, I mean, I love I
Yeah.
would love visual, but even like right now, my office isn't lit quite great because I just like prefer to stand right here right now. And
Right. Right.
I wanted my
Sure.
yoga mat to be over there. And I was like, fuck it,
Yeah.
quality of life,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sacrifice. Um,
Yeah.
but okay, but this is my point, right? Is like or this is my question. It's like,
Yeah.
how does someone who's more interested in the audio verbal component of content,
Right.
how do they
How do they get
balance
there? Yeah.
that with like living in a hyper visual video driven world?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, I think of one of the photographs was of young Pueblo. I think he has, 3.5 million followers now, and he's a poet, and all of his Instagram posts are just his words. They're just poetry. There's very few images of him out there. So if you like, and I'm fortunate that I have some good portraits of him. So often they're portraits I've taken of him, but he's not like on camera doing selfies, doing
This
photo
is what I
shooting.
had for breakfast.
Yes. Yeah. He meditates 2 hours a day and writes poetry. That's basically, he has this beautiful life. So I do think there are, of course, ways to be totally true to who we are and to find what that is. And for him, it was poetry and meditation. And that's basically all he does. And he's married and he has this beautiful life. And he writes poetry books. And
he's featuring his work, not his lifestyle. That's really what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
That is like
yes,
his work
yes.
is the words and the Shakti or the energy and the
Yeah.
intelligence, the wisdom in the words is what he's like, this is what I'm sharing with the world.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And everything else I'm not sharing because on these fronts, like it's kind of boring and I'm sort of,
Yeah.
I mean, boring to the voyeurism, right?
Right,
Like there he is
right.
meditating again.
Yeah. 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 And he wouldn't want to like introduce that energy into his meditation practice. And I think that's part of what you're saying is even like setting up camera and lights, like we don't all need to do that because like even for me, I have a bright light here and it's hard on my eyes. And so I have to decide, do I want that eye strain? But point back to that. So yes, one, always to do it. Two, really looking at ways to learn from other people. So if you're not a writer, look at that. Now you're mixing it up.
I'll go a little, I'll make some adjustments.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, but this is fun. I'm feeling, see, you look so much better. Actually, I would love to watch this more if you were in that light, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I've been messing around in my office a lot lately and just
but now, right now, I feel more warmth coming from you. I mean, the visual storytelling, I feel more warmth. I feel more connected. I feel more like, because what happens is there's a catch light in your eye. So anyhow, but okay, so back to that. But then for you, I would say, with audio,
lower is going to be better because the light's higher.
Yeah.
This is so good, right? Yeah. So if I lower the desk, now there's more light on my face. Yeah?
Yeah, that might be it. I mean, that's a nice look. It was fun. It was fun seeing some of your background because it's kind of like action. But wait, let me rewind real quick, Cate, because I'm trying to think of how is this valuable for people? If there's always stuff we don't want to do. Yes, pay attention to that. Figure that out. But then get cues from people who do things in ways that we like. So, and to make our weaknesses a little bit stronger. So for example, I've written books too. I've written 7 books and I've read books by Annie Dillard, by Anne Lamott, by, you name it. I've read books about how to write books, right? Even though I'm not an English major and a writer. I'm like, so with
turning pro. Yeah.
Turning pro. So with filmmaking, it's like, you got to freaking turn pro. You got to and even if you're and with audio is crazy important. And so that part of that is there's wealth of resources out there, how to make YouTube videos, how to do this, how to do that, camera height, camera position, shooting with iPhones. Make sure you buy, I'm not a gearhead, but I am a gearhead. So like iPhones and stuff, you got to have the newest iPhone if you're an influencer and if you want to create content, because it is a content creating like machine, like there are feature length films created on it. And so for $1,000 or whatever it is to have that capability with sound and with the ability to do the computational exposure, that is something that allows those of us who don't want to mess with things get it right. There's other cameras out there too that do that. But my point is, learning and gear count. And it doesn't have to be complicated gear. And it doesn't have to be going to school. It can be a 5-minute video and you can get better, you know?
I love that. I love that. I mean, it's just like that. It's at the evolving edge, right? And so, and
Yeah.
it all matters. So what are the easy things, the easy hard,
Yeah.
the hard things that are really the easy things to make it a lot better?
Yeah. Yeah. And like back to my portraits, what has made me very successful as a photographer is I'm like, guy on Brooklyn Bridge, will you move 2 feet to your left?
Mm-hmm.
And or there's this one photo, the photo I've made the most money off of any of my photos. I was standing in a parking lot and there was a white wall behind her, white wall across the way. So it was like white bouncing all around. And she thought I was like crazy. She's like, why are we doing a photo in a parking lot? I was like, just trust me, drop in, you know, rather than being on the street right here, just walk over here, boom. So it's that idea of like what I said earlier, get the hit, what's piquing your interest, the nettles, great. Then say, maybe even take a photo, then figure out the story and figure out the storytelling, then probably shoot a little bit more than you need in case you need to cut to other stuff like you did with your dog, and you're golden. That's it. It's simple.
Yeah. Love it. So good, Chris. So good to be in your world and in your thought leadership and in the, you know, your artistry, really.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean,
Super,
I love being in your
helpful.
world. Anything to be in Cate Stellman's world. Oh my gosh. It's a crazy world. And as I've told you before, all I want to be is like part of your like tribe, crew, place, way of operating the world. It's awesome.
So there's an hour south of Rishikesh there's these cow shalas.
Okay, I just realized.
You gotta go. You gotta
I have
go.
a 2:30 call.
Go. That was awesome.
Do we wrap this
you'll
up,
get
or
it.
do we just say that's it?
Oh, we're totally good. The rest will happen on YouTube. Mwah.
Yeah. Appreciate
Call
you.
you from India.
Okay.
Bye.